The funerals are taking place for the church shooting in South Carolina. Worried about possible copycats, New York City has beefed up security at local churches. One of the topics we took on with the police commissioner. You mentioned churches, Commissioner Bratton, so let's talk about that for a second. I try to keep my personal opinion out of things as much as possible. But
when did that start?
But Commissioner Bratton, I have to admit that I was deeply impressed on Sunday. I was at a medium-sized church in the Bronx, Soundview Missionary Baptist Church, and in the middle of service, or towards the end, two uniformed police officers that were extremely polite. They had no idea I was going to be there. And they just popped in.
Otherwise, it would have been there to serve the warrant, probably, and chase you down.
Hopefully, no warrant, Commissioner. And so, hopefully. And so they were extremely polite, and they said they were just in to check on things. Now, this is an initiative that you started in light of possible copycats out of the South Carolina situation?
The specific event you talked about or referenced on Sunday was an enlarged operation that we put into effect after the events in Charleston. We have in most of our precincts what are called House of Worship cars, which are designed to have officers who specifically check churches, particularly during time of services, whether it's Jewish, Muslim, Christian. But this past weekend, we asked our precinct commanders to enlarge that effort to just allay any fears that people would have, churchgoers would have, of a copycat situation. What you just described, I have one of my people who work in the office with me, my special counsel, Edna Wells Handy, church-going lady. We actually tease her about church being church lady. And she talked about at her church that there was a police car parked out front with two officers and how it was comforting in light of what just happened. So that was the intent, to make people feel a little more at ease. And so I'm happy that what you saw, that you had that reaction.
Commissioner, it was amazing. They were extremely polite, these two police officers, and they were going out of their way to make sure they didn't interrupt anything, interrupt services. They just wanted to make sure that everybody...
when the collection plate came around?
They got me on the collection plate, Commissioner. Let me turn to something that's been quite serious in the news lately, Commissioner. You're the top cop. You've been the top cop out in LA and Boston, back in New York now. How tough, in light of Cleveland, the Rice case, Eric Garner, Staten Island, no criminal indictment, Michael Brown, I can go on and on and on. But how difficult is it to be a cop on the job today, Commissioner?
It's very difficult for, whether it's the rank and file officer, the cops pushing those radio cars around in the street, on up through people like myself, commissioners, police chiefs. I've been in the business for 45 years, joined Boston Police in 1970 at a time of extraordinary social change in our country, coming out of the anti-war era, 70s, 60s, 70s, the civil rights era, the assassination of Martin Luther King, Robert Kennedy, and the whole societal revolution we were going through at that time. And that was a time of great crises, and out of that crisis came a lot of positive changes, particularly in the police profession. With one of two exceptions, the times that we're in now, equivalent to that period of time, that the societal engagement that's underway, particularly around issues of race, as well as issues involving the Muslim community, around issues of terrorism. And the events of last November, December, and going into January in the country and in the city were some of the most significantly problematic that I've ever experienced as a leader in policing. And what we would hope coming out of those crises and the continuing crises of confidence in the American criminal justice system, and not just in the police, interestingly, what's changed this time is crises of confidence in prosecutors, in judges, in the grand jury system. What's being called into question, particularly around issues of race, are the whole criminal justice system. So that was not the case back in 1970. The focus was largely police have to change and reform. Now the demand is the whole criminal justice system really needs to be looked at more closely and evaluated. And it's healthy, but what we want to make sure of is that we don't have a repeat of the events of December in the city where people were marching around signs and chanting, "What do we want? Dead cops." And what did we end up with? Dead cops. That's where the insanity actually became too much. And we're a great country. We have the right to demonstrate, the right of free expression. But when that free expression pushes people, encourages people toward violence, then we really have to take a step back and say, where are we going with this?
One thing I've always liked about you is that you'll sit down and do an interview.
I'm really going to lean into this one. Okay, let me hear this. I'm all ears.
One of the things I've always liked about you, Commissioner, is that you know, you don't get uptight about questions. You don't demand to see questions in advance, and that's a good thing. So here's the question. You may recall when I moderated the Hillary Clinton debate or Mike Bloomberg against Bill Thompson, we decided to do something different, which has now become a national phenomenon, a lightning round question, where you can only answer the question yes or no. And the reason why we did that is there's a tendency for politicians, elected officials, to go on and on and on and on. And
well,
in some cases, well, I notice I left the police commissioners out, but in some cases saying nothing, talking forever and saying nothing. Very simple question, not yes or no, but what do you like best about being police commissioner of New York City?
Oh, that's an easy one. That every day I get the chance to impact on people's lives, 8.5 million people's lives, 35,000 cops. And I hope the impact every day, if not most days, is a positive one. Doesn't get better than that.
Okay, so now, Commissioner, you know the flip side. And just between me and you,
and your thousands upon hundreds of thousands of listeners.
Just between me and you, what is the worst part of your job of being the police commissioner of New York City?
Oh, that's very easy, and we've just experienced that in the 18 months I've been here on 5 occasions, and that's police officers losing their lives. That Detective Guerra, Williams, Moore, Ramos, and Lou. Those 5 deaths, particularly the ones that in which the officer's life is taken by violence. That any loss of life is heart-rending, but the ones in which the life is actually taken.
It was hard at Officer Moore's funeral on Long Island, covering it.
A 25-year-old young man.
A young man shot in the face by a career criminal. He's going to get his day in court. But Commissioner, I close on this. How tough is it? And what do you say when you arrive at the hospital and you've got to explain to a family that their loved one that was giving their life to the city of New York is no longer with us?
Well, Dominic, there's no formula for that. You extemporize in each one of those situations, family circumstances. You know, we've had, in the case of Officer Moore, not married, no children. In the case of Ramos and Lou just recently married, no children. Ramos married with children. Each one is different, and there's a certain consistency of certain actions, certainly expression of grief, and that we'll be there to assist as we go forward. But each one is, you never get used to it, and really you don't never want to get used to it. You always want to be just intensely aware of how tragic this is, and you always hope that it will never happen again, but the reality is it will happen again.
Well, Commissioner Bratton, I've been covering you for now over 20 years, and
we both had a lot more hair back then when we started.
we both had a lot more hair. Commissioner Bratton, it's an honor and a privilege to chat with you, and we want you to succeed, because if you succeed, the people of New York succeed. So thank you, Commissioner.
Well, one of the great things that probably the best thing people say to me is when they say good luck. And I say, well, that's great, because my luck is your luck. That's
right.
You know, if I'm succeeding, everybody has a good day.
That's right.
Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you. All the best.
Commissioner, I think I still have some hair. Coming up next, the Commissioner just explained why it's tough to hire African-American cops for a variety of reasons. and our panel is here to weigh in.